Hello and welcome to episode 126 of Controller Club, the friendly face gaming space, a podcast where three friends from three different continents share in one love, and that is video games. My name is Kleinfeld, and alongside me today are two of my best friends in the whole wide gaming world. First, coming to us from across the pond, a member of the Phantom Thieves today, all dressed up and looking great, doing it. Tom Drew. Tom, how are you? What's going on? Tell us, for the people who aren't watching, it is on YouTube if you want to go watch. We're all dressed up. What is your costume today? It's a Halloween themed episode, so what's up?
Yeah, so it is a Halloween themed episode, so I wanted to theme it to that. But it's also a Batman themed episode, so I'm dressed as the Joker, but not the Joker you think. It's actually Joker from Persona 5. So it's a bit of a dual sort of thing. But just in this kind of like regular uniform attire at Shujin Academy. It was just a very easy thing to like find online, basically. But I think it works. I went to Comic Con this past week, and I was originally going to wear this there, but I just didn't. It would have been. I would have had to do an outfit change. It would have been a whole thing. But I'm excited to debut this for the watchers on YouTube. I hope they like our outfits. I'm ready to get talking about all the stuff today.
What kind of part-time job is your Shujin Academy student doing? Like, what are we doing in your free time when you're not at school, when you're not, changing hearts as a member of the Phantom Thieves?
I think he's just chilling at the onsen. I think he's just chilling,
Okay.
like trying to relax.
Wow. In the tub.
He's just yeah. Why not? Let's have fun.
Cool. Not dating your teacher, not like working at the convenience store, just
Nah,
hanging
none of
out in
that.
a big old vat of hot water with a bunch of other people. Great. Next up, journalist extraordinaire, the Australian abroad, also in costume today, Lauren Rouse. Lauren, how are you? Welcome to your first North American Halloween. This is how we do it.
I know, it's very exciting to be in a land that actually celebrates Halloween. We try to get into it in Australia, but it hasn't really taken off in the same way. So it's to be able to like go outside and just see Halloween decorations everywhere and get into the spirit. I am dressed, of course, as Ellie from The Last of Us, which is basically the only costume that I brought with me, or as some people would say, it is just what I wear every day.
Yeah, we've seen the Ellie look a few times, and it's great every time. You pull it off. Next, you got to get the tattoo done, and you'll be there. Put some. I like my
That's the
favorite.
part two look.
My favorite Lauren Ellie look is the like gruffed up Lauren Ellie, where you have the like you've done it where you've done like dirt and stuff on your face, and you got the backpack, and it just looks like you've seen some shit.
Yeah, we did a pretty proper one earlier in the year where I had the bow and arrow and I was doing the part two Ellie look and I had like fake blood all down my face and it was so sticky all day. So that only comes out on special occasions, maybe for Halloween next year.
Okay. I'll show. I guess you can't really see my costume if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening, you can't see anything. I am a Switch controller. Let's try not paper cut my neck.
And do you have
And
Joy-Con drift?
I do actually. I think that my just mentally have Joy-Con drift going on just about every single day. And yeah, I chose to be the one with the face buttons on it because the one with the D-pad on it, you can't actually tell that it's a D-pad. It's just these black circles with black triangles on them. But yes, the video game themed costumes are out in abundance today, and we're going to have so much fun here on the show. And we are dressed up because we have a special Halloween show planned. We will be reviewing the Batman Arkham Trilogy as a part of our New Game Plus Video Game Book Club Game of the Month. A spooky but not scary series of video games. Also on today's show, we have another God of War TV show update, and the Prince of Persia team has gotten disbanded. We'll talk about all that and more in just a bit, but I want to get to you two. What have we been playing over the last week or so? It's been a little while. Have we gotten up to anything exciting? Have we maybe partaken in anything particularly spooky in the world of video gaming over the last little bit? If not, that's okay. It's the time of year.
No. For me,
Okay, I thought I'd ask.
This past week has really just been dedicated to Batman for me. I'm like,
Yeah.
I was like really running behind, so I was like, I just got to finish this game. It's not even a long game either, but I really need to finish it up. But no, like I mentioned, I went to MCM Comic Con in London. And it was like kind of a hybrid with like a gaming convention as well. I didn't get a lot of time to like play any of the games because I was just limited on time. They had a bunch of different demos. They had a Samsung booth, and it was like collabed with Sonic X Shadow Generations, and I got like a little Sonic key ring, but it has like it spins, so it has Sonic on one side and Shadow on the other side. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I mentioned also I dressed up as a different costume while I was at Comic Con. So I dressed up as Dipper from Gravity Falls, which is like one of my favorite shows. And like I've never done the whole cosplay thing seriously at a convention like this. So I was really shocked when people genuinely like, excuse me, can I like take a picture with you? And it was like really nice and like humbling. I was like, this is so cool that we could just engage in this nerdy goodness. It's nice to be surrounded by wonderful nerds in a place like that. So that's what I've been doing this week.
I like that's something I noticed going to my first convention earlier this year was like I've never felt more, I don't know, not seen, but just like everyone there is like so open and welcoming to everyone else's just like amazing, fun, cool interests. And so when I see some girl on the escalator leaving dressed as Ellie and I walk by and I go, awesome Ellie costume, and they light up. It's just like it's so cool. It's such a unique and cool space where yeah, it's like within these four walls, we are all family and we all love the same things. And I think it's really neat.
It also like actually takes a lot for someone to like sometimes work up their courage to ask for a photo. So you always feel really gratified when it happens because you're like, oh, I recognize that might have. I always feel scared to go up to people and ask for them because I'm like, oh, you've probably been stopped like a million times today. I don't want to like take up more of your time. But actually, usually they love it. They're like flattered. So that's great.
Lauren, have you been playing anything this week?
Similar to Tom, I've just been like getting through Arkham Knight because Arkham Knight I think is probably the longest of the three, and I'd forgotten like a lot goes on. Even if I barely did any side quests, and so it did take a while. The other thing is, I'm not sure if you could call this a game, but I'm on Duolingo now,
Hell
which
yeah,
is kind
sure.
of like
Yeah, cool.
language learning game. So if you want to add me, if any Duolingo friends want to add me, let me know. I'm gonna like post my little friend code so that I can follow everyone's progress. But I've been enjoying that. I pretended because when you start a language, it says, what's your like, what level are you at? And I'm trying to learn French because hey, everything in Canada is also written in French, and I'd like to know what that says when it comes up. And I was like, well, I know some common words. Like we went to Paris, bonjour, whatever. And then so I was like, I know the basics. And so it put me into level 2. And I was like, oh, I don't know anything. All these words I'm supposed to be knowing. So I think I'm in a bit of deep water, but hopefully that means I will catch up quicker. But yeah, Duolingo, great little game for the day.
I know I've been on it for I think I just I'm almost at 400 days in a row on Duolingo. I've been
Wow.
learning Japanese for the last like year and a bit. And it's fun. It's my little right before bed I do it. I like lay there and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this means that and this means that and this sentence means that." And it I don't know
Do
if
you
it's
think it's
actually
working?
working. I think maybe a little. I'm definitely not devoting like a significant amount of time to it. So it is really like 10 minutes a day maybe. So I don't feel like I am progressing super super fast, but there are certainly some things I didn't think it was working, and then I even just like watching like game presentations and stuff like that where there is like written like kanji, I'm like, "Oh, I know what that says," which I didn't think I would because looking even now, like in Duolingo, looking at the kanji, I'm really just starting to like, okay, this means ka, and this means it's hard to learn a different language when it isn't even your alphabet, is what I'm
Yeah.
really finding.
Yeah.
Double
But
the work.
I think it's working. You do anything, you podcast for 126 episodes. I'm sure we're better now than we were however many years ago. I think it would be exactly the same with Duolingo, even though if you're doing it for 5-10 minutes of a time.
Great. Well, come back to me in a year.
Yeah, exactly. And by that time, we're going to do our first fully French, podcast. So it's all going to be in French. And yeah, tune in for episode 300. It's going to be great.
We're on this
Bonjour,
journey
à bien.
together.
Oh my god, that would be hard. That would be difficult. This week I've been playing. I have gotten into the spooky mood. I am not a horror game person at all, ever. The Last of Us is probably as far as I'd go, and I guess there's horror elements to that. There are some very scary moments. I'm not trying to take away from The Last of Us, but I wouldn't call it a full on like survival horror game. I don't know why. Maybe I'm wrong in that. I decided this week I would give one of two games a try because one of them was free on PlayStation Plus this month and I had never played it. And the other one has been on PlayStation Game Collection or whatever for a very long time. And so I downloaded the Dead Space remake and I downloaded the Resident Evil 2 remake. I opened up Dead Space once, got about I don't know, 15 minutes in and said, nope, not going to happen. This is very too scary for me. So I decided I would give Resident Evil 2 Remake a try. I was actually DMing Tom about it this week because I know that he's played it. I've beaten it. I guess I've beaten one half of it because I guess there's like, you kind of go through the game as one character and then there's another story with another character you can go through as well. But it's pretty much the same game, right,
Mostly
Tom?
the
Like, I
same.
think there's some
Yeah.
stuff that is a little different. This is my first Resident Evil game. I really liked it. I thought that it was it was scary for sure, but I didn't realize that the Resident Evil games are really like these like big puzzle boxes. Like it's like a Rubik's cube where you walk into, in Resident Evil 2, it's the police station, let's say, and you literally like go from room to room to room until you find a certain item, and then that starts to slowly unspool the thread that is this puzzle box of a level, where it's like, okay, I got that item, so now I can go over here and unlock this, and once I unlock that, I'll get this, and I can go over here and unlock that. And meanwhile, you're ducking around zombies and shooting zombies in the head and stuff, and the zombies themselves aren't like super frightening. It's some of the other things that you encounter. I hated the dogs, Tom. The zombie
Oh
dogs
yeah, the dogs are
weren't
rough.
scary. They were just annoying. I just couldn't kill them. I met a licker, which is a big Resident Evil thing, and it's like this like walks on all fours thing where its brain is exposed, and that was a little freaky. And then I met, I don't know his name. He's a man in a
Mr. X.
hat, Mr. X, Lauren Rouse. This guy, you meet him about halfway through the game, and the whole game so far, you're like, this is fine. I'm shooting zombies in the head. Once I kill the zombies, they kind of go away. So I'm just kind of running through this police station at will without anything really blocking me. And then you meet Mr. X, and he is a
I'm
man.
having a look at him
He is
right
a
now.
giant man in a trench coat and a hat, and he follows you very slowly, but follows you for the rest of the game. And so you will be like, okay, I think I got away from him. And then his music will start playing, and you're like, where is he? Where is he? Like, what's going on? And you turn around, and there he is, and you just have to run. You just have to go. You have to like the levels are very intelligently designed where there are multiple ways out of just about everywhere. So it's like I'm trying to go do this, but because he's right there behind me, I can't go that way. So I gotta go do the long way around to come back. It was frightening, it was terrifying, but then I started to realize the music. That's when he's coming. I can hear the music. And then they duped me where I'm walking down a hallway and he bursts through the wall beside me. And I was like, nope, that's this is far enough for me. I did go through and beat the game, but I see how this game is a horror game. He is terrifying. I hate it. Just oh my gosh. And then there'd be places where you think you're safe. You're like, oh, this is all the lights are on in here. Like this has been a safe place for the game so far. I'm talking mainly about the lobby of the police station. And I hears music in the lobby, and I'm like, no, where is he? And I turn around, he's behind me on the stairs. It was really good. But I don't know if I need to do it again.
That's how I felt after playing it the first time. Like, because I played Claire's story the first time, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do both of them. I will play Leon's campaign eventually, but after playing it, I was like, yep, that was a lot. Because at the first, like you said, the fear is sort of manageable. You can kind of like, there are zombies and stuff. Be like, okay, I know what I'm dealing with. If I go in this room, I know what to expect here. But yeah, Mr. X, he just adds a complete like new dynamic to it, and it's just it's so frightening, but I love it. It's just the terror, the tension that you have when in every single move. Um, it's just so fun. And like the thing is with him is like he is scary. And like,
He's kind of
but the
silly
worst thing,
looking though.
he is silly looking, and like the worst thing he can do is just punch you in the head. Like he's not gonna like jump scare you, but I don't know, like just the way they've designed the game is so clever, and like how it really amps up that fear factor. So yeah, I'm really glad you
The
played it
first
because
time
it's so
he
good.
showed up, he's like right in front of me, and I'm like, I can kill him. I'll just keep shooting at him, and I do one shot, and I hit him in the face and knocked his hat off, and he didn't like that, and came sprinting at me, and I was like, oh no, and I had to like duck out of the way and just keep going. And the worst part about him is he moves so slowly that you can get away from him very easily, and then sometimes it'll be 15, 20 minutes, sometimes half an hour, and you're like, ah. I totally forgot about that Mr. X guy. This is fine. And then boom, his music hits, and you're like, no, not right now. I really liked
Sounds
it.
like a nightmare.
I think I would like to play Resident Evil 3 now. I would like to maybe even go back and play Resident Evil 1 because I loved this like weird Rubik's Cube gameplay. It was it felt almost like a Zelda dungeon. Where you're like slowly like unlocking doors by getting new things, and I really liked it. The other thing that I wanted to shout out, not something I've been playing, but I actually ordered it weeks ago and it finally came in. I started Jason Schreier's new book this week. Play Nice. I don't know if you two read his other books. There's Press Reset, which is about like the basically I don't know how companies have like screwed over game developers for a very long time. It's about collective job action and stuff like that. And then there was Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, which was his first book. And that was each chapter is a different game. And we are going to like go through how games were made from one person teams making Stardew Valley and having that blow up to like the massive Amy Hennig canceled Star Wars game and stuff like that. And this one, Play Nice, is all about one thing, and that's Blizzard, which Tom, I know you have some thoughts about because you are an Overwatch 2 player, and it's just a history. Guess not just a history because it goes from the beginning all the way up to today through everything that's happened at Blizzard. And I think that Jason Schreier is like one of the most talented. He's probably my favorite gaming writer working. I just like the way that he writes. It works with my brain very well. And so reading this book, it's very, very business speak, but it's super engaging the way that he writes it. And I'm still really early on, but I'm liking it a lot.
Yeah, I've pre-ordered it because I'm just fascinated by Activision Blizzard like as a company, so I'm really keen to read it. I don't think it's going to arrive. I think it's like it released in North America a bit earlier than it has the rest of the world. So I don't think it will come for like a month or two. But yeah, when I get it, like I'm gonna sink my teeth into it and just find out all this crazy stuff about this company.
Yeah, I found myself like really liking it when journalists write books. I don't know why. I guess because like it's a different application of like writing articles, but yeah, his books have been on my list for a while. I don't have that much of an interest in Activision Blizzard just because I'm not familiar with their work, but I would like to read his other books.
Yeah, I think that I don't have a deep history with Blizzard, but it is cool to see, especially where I am right now in the history of it, where they were gaming Pixar. They could do no wrong. They were the most celebrated company in the world, and it just like they have gone through a lot since then. And so I'm interested to see when we start getting into some of that stuff, when we start getting into the Activision of it all, and then ultimately leading to the Xbox acquisition, I guess, towards the very end. So it'll be cool. I've seen some stories coming out of like journalists reading it and writing news stories from some of the reporting that he does, and I'm excited to see like what were these canceled games that never made it out. What are these some details about Overwatch 2 or something like that, a game that I know and love that maybe I've missed out on in my time of playing and stuff like that. So I'm excited to get through it. I usually burn through his books. I'm not a very fast reader when it comes to literature for some reason. I just like I can once I sit down and I'm reading, I can burn through something, but I am so like hesitant for some reason to like sit down and just read a book. Whereas with his, I burn right through them. So that's what we've been playing this week. Let's get into the news. Tom Drew, give us that news jingle.
It's the news we choose. Ooh.
Ooh, it's the news ghost. The news ghost is here.
The news
The
ghost
ghost
is
is
back.
Lizzie.
Yeah, yes, there she is. Oh my god, I just summoned her. Crazy.
We will start with me this week. There has been some drama with my beloved Prince of Persia: Lost Crown. The team has been disbanded. This is coming from Tom Phillips at Eurogamer. Ubisoft has responded to a report published yesterday, which was earlier this past week, that claimed Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown's team has been disbanded. In a statement to Eurogamer, the Assassin's Creed publisher largely confirmed what had been reported, though made clear that the game's team were still present and busy at development studio Ubisoft Montpellier, albeit now on, quote, other projects that will benefit from their expertise. Yesterday's report by Origami was not fully clear on the status of the team behind The Lost Crown, which received a positive critical response upon its launch this year, though failed to set things ablaze. The report still also suggested The Lost Crown would not receive a sequel as a result of its commercial performance, something Ubisoft does not contradict today, with ideas for a follow-up reportedly merging into plans for the game's DLC. Quote, I'm extremely proud of our team's work and passion at Ubisoft Montpellier to create a game that resonated with players and critics alike, and I am confident in its long-term success, end quote. Adalak Elgis, Prince of Persia The Lost Crown senior producer, said in a statement to Eurogamer, quote, Prince of Persia The Lost Crown is now at the end of its post-launch roadmap with 3 free content updates and 1 DLC that released in September. We are now focusing on making the game available to more players. It was recently launched on Steam and will be available on Mac by this winter. Quote, most of the team members who have worked on Prince of Persia Lost Crown have shifted to other projects that will benefit from their expertise. We know players have a love for this brand, and Ubisoft is excited to bring more Prince of Persia experiences in the future. So this is a huge bummer. This sucks. They're not fired. This team is still working at Ubisoft. That has been made very clear by Ubisoft themselves. But there will not be a sequel, at least in the next little while, to what might be the best Metroidvania I've ever played. It's one of my games of the year. I've raved about it on this podcast and out since it came out. So this is a bit of a bummer. I do want to throw in a bit of context. There was some developers talking since this news came out, saying that the development on Prince of Persia was one of the best they've been a part of since they've started in the gaming industry. Some people had been pulled off of Beyond Good and Evil 2 at Ubisoft to work on Prince of Persia, and were like, this is amazing. This is such a breath of fresh air. I love that I'm doing it. And now they are back working within Ubisoft on some unnamed projects that, who knows, could be Beyond Good and Evil 2 again. We do not know. This sucks. This is a huge bummer. I want to know what you guys think about it. I want to know maybe if we should, as an industry, be shifting our expectations of things, because obviously they were expecting this to hit the sales targets of stuff like the Metroid games and things like that, and maybe that was not the best plan of action. But I don't know what you guys think. Lauren, what are your thoughts here?
I think I just want to focus on the silver lining at this point, which is like there's not many, but at least this is an instance of where it wasn't just Ubisoft cutting another 100 staff. It was, yeah, they've just gone on to other jobs, which so they still have their jobs, which I think I'm grateful for. But yeah, I know that this is a very like disappointing update for people who liked the Lost Crown, like you, Klein. But I wonder if the issue was, of course, it didn't sell as well as it was hoping for, but I wonder if that was like a number of factors. Like, is it just a case of like video games are expensive to buy and we're in a cost of living crisis? It came out in January, kind of like right, or February, anyway, like right after Christmas. So I feel like maybe people had like pockets were tightening again after the Christmas season. So I wonder if like any of those things were kind of contributing to that, or people wanted to save their money for Final Fantasy or Dragon's Dogma or something else that was coming out closer to the beginning of the year. I know that I am like just as a consumer in that place right now where it's like I'm being selective with which games I'm going to buy because I just can't afford to buy them all. So I wonder if that was part of it. Also, when people think of Prince of Persia, this is obviously a new take on the game. It's not the traditional kind of like Prince of Persia like reboot that everyone was hoping for, and I know that that's gone through its own hellish development cycle and things like that. But so maybe they just sort of wrote it off as something that's not the Prince of Persia that I want. It's interesting though that Ubisoft is like, we're excited to bring more Prince of Persia experiences in the future. I'm like, well, are you? Like, if you're not going to make another one of these, and that the proper remake is sort of keeps going through this like crazy cycle. I think it's still gone back to square one again. That was the last we'd heard of it, or had moved to a different Ubisoft team. Whatever happens, it's like been a long time coming. So I just don't know if it's Prince of Persia's time,
Yeah, I think that it is a little frustrating for me because I don't know if Ubisoft did enough to get people excited about this game. It didn't really have a marketing push behind it at all. The only reason I knew about it was because we talked about it here on the show and we'd seen the trailers and stuff like that. And it, as they said, it only just came to Steam. Like, it wasn't even being put in places where it could succeed, where people could find it. It was on Ubisoft's internal launcher and consoles and stuff like that. I think that if it was on Steam, it would have seen at least a bit bigger audience, because there is a much larger chance of people on Steam, especially on the PC platform, of seeing, hey, this game is doing so well critically. People can't stop talking about it, even a few months after it came out. Maybe I should give it a shot. Maybe they put it on sale or something like that. And they didn't even give the team a chance to see this success that could potentially come, because the year's not over yet. The Game Awards could have this could, for all we know, like, it's in my running for Game of the Year. It could win Game of the Year at Jeff Keighley's award show. Like, let's say that happens. If that were to happen, there would be a bump for sure in sales. There would be for sure people going, hey, maybe I should give this game a try. What happens now? Like, this team will very likely win something at that award show. It probably won't be Game of the Year just because it is a fairly niche thing, but there are other categories. Who's going to get up there and accept the statue? Like, I don't know. It just seems like it just seems like Ubisoft was looking for an excuse to get rid of this group, and they've found it.
Yeah, the thing for me, I think, is like, you know, Lost Crown was like probably, arguably, one of the more creative ventures that Ubisoft has done in the past like few years. Like, you talk about the like Ubisoft kind of formula, and that sort of mold that Ubisoft tries to put a lot of its games into. I'm just worried with this whether they take the wrong lessons in terms of like, oh well, people didn't like this kind of off the wall kind of different game. So let's just go back to doing like what we're used to. But then on the flip side of that, it's a different team with massive, but you have Star Wars Outlaws, which was criticized for maybe following too closely to the Ubisoft formula. So I'm just like, I'm so curious to know where Ubisoft's head at is with like how they're going to move forward, if they're not going to pursue a game like this. There's been some kind of like rumors, like Inside Gaming has said that some of the team is working on like a Rayman remake now, which, I mean, it could be cool. But at the same time, I'm like, it's nice when we have games that are like, get remakes and that kind of revitalizes things, but I want new games. Like, I'd love if this was different and it was like, okay, we're not gonna go ahead with a Lost Crown sequel, but we are gonna like go back to the Rayman franchise and maybe try something different with that. I'd be like a bit more optimistic. But the fact that they're just going back to like, oh, okay, this worked, remakes work, in general, is a little bit disheartening. And then yeah, you have like the Beyond Good and Evil 2 of everything, and like, I don't know if that like, who knows what's going on with that game. So yeah, it is just sad. I mean, like, yeah, I bought like Lost Crown. I haven't played it yet. But it is, it's a shame that like it didn't meet expectations, whatever those expectations were. And then it came to this.
I think you can see the decision making from a business standpoint, which is like very black and
Totally.
white. Game did not perform, hence we should put the team on something else. It hasn't justified itself a sequel. But I'm with you, Tom. Like, I hope this doesn't discourage them from like still trying other things. Like, because if you have like a little indie game that's critically acclaimed but doesn't sell well, and then you have something like your general formula, Star Wars Outlaws, massive IP, still doesn't really sell that well. Like, what is the way forward? I think they're in a really
Exactly.
interesting space, which is why it was interesting to see Assassin's Creed Shadows get pushed out, because I think that's like a massive linchpin for them. And if that doesn't go well, like, what do they have?
Yeah, the horizon for Ubisoft is bleak, I think. Like, it is right now it is such a big question mark of what even comes after Assassin's Creed Shadows. And you think about what was the last thing for them that was a hit. As Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I guess, like, did Mirage live up to expectations? It wasn't Star Wars, it wasn't Prince of Persia, whether it be it did super well critically, it just didn't sell. And so I'm confused. I don't know what the thinking is. I think that with this team, if I were at the top of Ubisoft, you know what? That's a lofty job. That's a huge responsibility. I understand that sometimes hard decisions need to be made, but with this team specifically, they did something amazing with Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Keep them together and go, hey, like, I don't know, go get a license or something like that and be like, hey, like, let's try and put that magic on a Star Wars, on a on something that maybe is more commercially viable, and then you could have this big coming out party where it would be this huge, massive thing, and something like that. Like, this sounds crazy. Like, go do a Metroid game. Like, that would never happen. But you see what I mean? I think that there were other options to go rather than completely disassemble. Because yes, they're still working within the company, but that collective knowledge of them together making that sauce that was there is now, I don't know, non-existent. It is in 400 different places across Ubisoft. Bummer.
Um,
Lauren, give us some, I don't know, maybe happier news.
Yeah, so my news story today is a follow up to one that we had recently, which was about the God of War TV show losing its showrunners, and it turns out they did not. The show did not have a showrunner. Did not have a showrunner for very long because they've hired a new one. But anyway, this is from Nellie Andriva at Deadline, who writes, Ronald D. Moore is back in the Sony Pictures TV Studios fold, and the prolific creator showrunner is taking on a high-profile IP for the studio. He has been tapped as writer, executive producer, and showrunner of Sony TV and Amazon MGM Studios' Prime Video series God of War, based on PlayStation's hugely popular ancient mythology-themed video game. Moore's involvement with God of War follows the recent exit of the project's original creative team, showrunner, executive producer Rafe Judkins, and exec producers Hawk Ostby and Mark Fergus, who had been with the show since its inception 2.5 years ago. As Deadline reported, they had completed multiple scripts prior to the changeover, which marks a shift in the creative direction of the series adaptation. So the main news out of this is that Ronald D. Moore, who has worked on things like Battlestar Galactica, Outlander, For All Mankind, he's been the showrunner on all of those projects, is now going to be working on the God of War TV show. So I wanted to know what you guys think about this. This is another massive name to join the show, and what do you think it might mean for the creative direction, Tom?
Yeah, I've not seen, I don't think, any of the shows that Ronald D. Moore's worked on. But obviously they speak for themselves. Like Battlestar Galactica is very beloved, and a lot of the Star Trek series that he's worked on as well. So having someone with this kind of pedigree, it does remind me of like a Fallout, where they're like, okay, we got this kind of big name. Let's see if we can make it fit into what we want the show to be. Um, he has done he's done Outlander, which is more of like a not really fantasy, I guess, but it's like it's more historical.
Like
So I
period
guess that,
drama, yeah.
yeah, so that fits more in. But yeah, it's interesting that they went with more like a someone who's traditionally more known for like sci-fi. Um, is Kratos going to be like on a spaceship? Maybe that's the direction. Like, guys, the Norse stuff, it's not working. We're going to put him in space. Maybe that's what they're doing there. Yeah, I don't know, but if they're confident in him, I mean, yeah, like I said, he has the pedigree of doing all these other shows. So, yeah, I think I've I guess I'm a bit more excited, but also like, yeah, having not seen any of his stuff, it's hard to like picture what he can like bring to the table if that makes sense.
What about you, Klein?
I think that this is exactly what we kind of thought would happen when the last showrunners left. Was we said a big name, that like a big name will be put into this position. It'll be just like when Jonathan Nolan got brought on a Fallout and when Craig Mazin brought on The Last of Us. And here it is. We got a big name. I'm like you, Tom. I haven't seen anything from him, but I know Battlestar Galactica is beloved. Like, people, this is like not the original, but the, I guess, early 2000s, late 90s remake that is like considered some of the best sci-fi storytelling ever. And For All Mankind on Apple TV Plus is, people keep raving about that show. Like, I've done some writing on it for the direct.com and people love it. So I'm excited to see what his vision looks like. I think that just judging from this pedigree, he has the resume to back up the sort of scale that I think a God of War TV show needed, and the kind of scale that we were a little worried might start to falter, might start to fall by the wayside as they change creative direction. No, this reassures me that this is going to be a big, huge, massive Amazon project, and I think he's going to do a pretty good job. I think that he is at least creatively heading in the right direction for this show.
Yeah, I have been thinking about this a little bit. I actually wrote an article on Game Rant earlier in the week about what this could mean. And so I kind of analyzed a bit of Ronald D. Moore's work. And I'm similar. I've seen bits and pieces of Battlestar Galactica and Outlander and this and that. But what I seem to like notice as the trend is that he's just really great at establishing a world with great characters and like letting it, like establishing it really solidly and just like letting it fly. So he comes in, implements Outlander, and then goes and does For All Mankind. Both those shows now have spin-off TV series coming out of that. So I think he's really great at world building and also at adapting things. Battlestar Galactica was a reboot of the original series, and Outlander is obviously based on books. So I think this is like promising because he understands adaptation, and like even though it's maybe not like in fantasy, I think he understands the assignment. So that's exciting. But what I have seen some people sort of wondering out of this is the new creative direction that they're going in, do we think that they're going to go with the Greek stories first versus starting in the North mythology era? Because originally that's what Prime was doing, was starting with like the 2018 game. So do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I think that it will still be Norse, just because that is what God of War is at this point to so many people. I understand like the originals are beloved. I played the originals, but I think that it really became the storytelling vessel that it is with the Norse stuff.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, look, you can make any story, anything can be good, right? Like they could go back to the Greek stuff and work it into a show, I feel like. I'm not sure whether like I haven't played those original games. But I don't think those games were like the stories were like, good for what they were, but not to like the extent of like obviously what we have now. So it's probably like a little bit more difficult, just like emotionally, I guess, to try and hit those beats. Like I said, you can make it work. But yeah, I wonder like, or maybe they go for like a completely different direction. Like there's space between Kratos in Greece and Kratos in Scandinavia. Maybe there's like a pocket there. Like with Fallout, like they made it work. They were able to find like a really unique entry point into that world, tell a completely new story, and it was like amazing. So maybe that's something they want to explore here, where they kind of maybe tie it a bit more into what fans know of like that world, but tell something completely new, so everyone's kind of like satisfied. Where new fans can like experience a completely new story, that's great, and like existing fans get something completely new as well, and like that they haven't experienced in this world yet.
Yeah, I think if they wanted to do like get out of the story, their big prestige, like Last of Us moment, like this is an exact play-by-play of the games, they would probably need to go from the first Norse game. But I just can't, like people are saying like they shouldn't disregard his backstory. Like maybe they can do it in flashbacks and stuff. And I just feel like that's too much. Like there's already enough going on in that first God of War game to definitely fill out a season. So I would be like stressed about trying to tell both stories at the same time. I'm sure it can be done, but I personally feel stressed about that. So I'm leaning towards it actually being better if they do start in the Greek era, like do a season in Greece, do a season in Midgard, and then maybe continue on to Ragnarok, or whatever. Or yeah, they tell the in between time. How did Kratos get to Midgard? Like that's always something that hasn't been explored. But I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't envy the guy. It's a big task.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There are a lot of directions you can take this at this point. Like, so yeah, Godspeed to him, because he's gonna need it.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll find out more very soon. Like now that he is on board, they'll start like the writing will officially start to happen, and in the next year we'll probably know who Kratos is going to be, and that will tell a lot of where they're going to go with this story. Is it a younger actor? Is it an older actor? We'll be able to know, I think, right from there whether it's going to be Greek or Norse. That's the news. Tom Drew, give us the outro.
It's the news we choose. Ooh, she came back. She came back for the outro as well. It's crazy.
Back from the dead. Next up It is our New Game Plus, a video game book club game of the month conversation for the month of October 2024, revisiting the Batman Arkham Trilogy. Now, for this month's New Game Plus book club game, we did something a little bit different. Instead of all of us playing the same game as we have since the very beginning of the show here, we thought it would be fun to divvy things up and play 3 different games before coming together and talking about all of them right here and now. And those games have been the Batman Arkham Trilogy, Batman Arkham Asylum, Batman Arkham City, and Batman Arkham Knight. Respect to Batman Arkham Origins, but we only did the Rocksteady games. Developed by Rocksteady and released between 2009 and 2015, the Arkham Trilogy redefined what superhero games are as a genre. Before this, licensed comic book games were usually used as cheap cash-ins for upcoming movies, ongoing TV series, stuff like that. This series, though, instead took on original Batman stories and used the video game medium to tell them. All 3 games have been critically acclaimed, averaging a 91% on Metacritic, with each game being praised for their authentically Batman feel and easy to pick up but difficult to master innovative free-flow combat system. So, we've all played the games, or each of us picked a game, and we've all played our games. We finished them, so we're going to start from the beginning. We'll go Tom, we'll go me, and we'll go Lauren. Tom has Asylum, I have City, and Lauren has Knight. We'll kind of have a conversation about each game as we go. But Tom, let's do it. Let's get into it. Batman Arkham Asylum. First time through, right?
Yes. I've played all the Arkham games except for Asylum. I remember when I was
Including
in...
Origins?
Yeah, I played Origins.
Good for you.
Yeah, I haven't played like the 3DS games or whatever, to be fair. So maybe I shouldn't say like I played all of them, but I played the main ones now. But yeah, my experience with Asylum before this was in, I want to say, like year 8 to like, I think it's like 7th grade in American terms. I was at like a sleepover and my friends played all through Asylum in one night, and we were up to like 6 or 7 in the morning, I think. And so I don't remember anything about it really. And yeah, I just never played it up until this point. If you don't know about anything about these games, basically the whole premise is that Batman, he's escorting the Joker to Arkham Asylum after the Joker's done a big crime, and he's taking him through. But something goes wrong, and Joker manages to weasel his way through and basically take over the asylum. And a bunch of villains get involved with this whole kind of narrative of the Joker's plan, and you're basically just trying to get through this asylum, stop the Joker from thwarting Gotham. It's a pretty standard Batman story, but with some twists and turns here and there. But yeah, I really liked it. It's definitely like, it brought me back to playing like the previous games a lot, like Arkham City and Knight, because it definitely feels like a foundation. Like, and it's a very strong one. Like, I think I was surprised playing through it, like how much does carry over into the subsequent games. Like a lot of the gadgets, obviously the free flow combat is like pretty like robust in that game still, but they improve it a lot as as the games go on. But yeah, I was really impressed. I think like the story is it's good. Like the story is, I think like what really keeps you going is that kind of Batman Joker dynamic. But I think as well, like the games as they kind of go on, they get more ambitious with it. The performances from different characters are a bit more fleshed out. But I think this is like just a really solid foundation. It's like, this is the spooky month. It does feel like almost kind of like a Resident Evil, but not as scary. So it's kind of like an entry point. Like you can play this, and then maybe you're like, okay, if I wanted something a bit scary, you could play like a Resident Evil 2 or something like that. But yeah, I really liked it. It was good. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts before if we go into like deeper like discussion points. Lauren, what's your kind of history with Asylum?
I have such nostalgia. Of all the Batman Arkham games, Asylum is the one I have the most nostalgia for, because I remember like, I think I'd just gotten like a PC of my own, and I was so excited. Like I was coming into my superhero phase where I like really loved DC comics, and and Batman and Superman, and there was a Batman game coming out. I was like, this is great. And like I would play it, and my best friend would be playing it on her computer, and we would like talk about what was happening. And it was just like, I think it opened my eyes to a new sort of, I guess, like genre, or just like a way of superhero game that superhero games could be. And I just like, it was really my entry point into a lot of Batman as well. Like I was like fascinated in learning all these different like villains from the rogues gallery, and I was sort of obsessed with like exploring all the little corners of the asylum. And it was just like everything it does is just so good, like introducing free flow combat, having those stealth sections with inverted takedowns, and using all your gadgets in detective mode. Like it introduces so many great gameplay elements that carry on through the series. But like, yeah, it was just so ingenious and like perfect for the character. It's so, they've done a similar thing with like, Insomniac did a similar thing with Marvel Spider-Man, but when you just nail the character perfectly and like pair it with the gameplay, it's so satisfying.
What about you, Klein? What's your kind of history with Asylum?
Mine's similar to Lauren's. It would have been a couple years, maybe a year or two after it came out, and I was around a similar age to when you were first introduced to it, Tom, like 12, 13. And this was we're hanging out at the mall, as I did for a lot of weekends as a teen, and went into the EB Games and looked at the bargain bin, and for $7 they had Batman Arkham Asylum on sale. Like
That is a crime.
it was a used copy.
You
I
can't even
bought it.
buy it for that much anymore.
I know. I bought it, and I remember taking it home, and I had an interest in Batman up to that point. I'd seen like The Dark Knight maybe, but I didn't know the lore. I didn't know who Oswald Cobblepot was. I didn't know who, like, even like the whole, like, I knew about Robin. I didn't know there was more than one of them. And so going into that game for the first time and unlocking like the character bios and looking and reading every, like, oh, this person appeared here and this is who they are and this is their bio. I can remember poring over just like pouring over all of those characters. And then leading into when City came out, like I didn't finish Arkham Asylum, and because I got to the Poison Ivy boss fight and was like, I can't beat this. This is impossible. And I put it away. And then Arkham City came out, and I played Arkham City and played through that, and was like, I have to finish it. And I went back and like first try, I remember, went back and beat the Poison Ivy fight. But I think that there is before Batman Arkham Asylum when it comes to these like licensed games, and there's after. And like Lauren mentioned Insomniac Spider-Man, that doesn't happen without the Arkham Asylum and City and Night like trilogy. The upcoming Wolverine game, that doesn't happen. Like even I think stuff like the modern like Lord of the Rings games, I think that like Batman Arkham Asylum very, very much defined what you can do with a licensed property. And yeah, it's a lot smaller than the other games. Some people like that it is way more of like a Metroidvania compared to an open world kind of, not RPG, but kind of, there are RPG systems in Asylum, but not to the extent of City and Night. So I think that it's a contained experience, and it is a fantastic foundation for like where we go from there.
Yeah, I think you guys touched on like the thing that this game, I think for me, really like kind of revolutionized with these licensed games is the fact that there is so much reverence for that Batman mythos. Like they're not afraid to just like go insane with like all this different comics lore and stuff from the animated shows. They just draw so much that like not even like a lot of the movies have never even like dared to like touch at all. And it just all works really well. It feels like tonally consistent, and I was just so impressed, like going back to this and like remembering, like, oh my god, yeah, they really do care. Like one of the coolest moments, and I remember seeing like back in the day, Batman Arkham videos. They use like this YouTuber does like a bunch of like Batman Arkham videos, videos about the games. And like there's one Easter egg where you go to a jail cell and there's Aaron Cash, one of the like GCPD I think he works at the asylum, and he's in jail and he's like, "Hey, Batman, let me out! I've been trapped here." And you're like, "Wait a minute! I just saw Aaron Cash like 5 minutes ago. Why is he in jail?" So you turn around and you're like, "Okay, I can't really do anything." and then you hear Jim Gordon's voice, and then you realize, oh, that's supposed to be Clayface, and he's like changing,
Yeah.
and just realizing that that's such a cool like thing that they put in, on top of all the other stuff that they do with like the Riddler and even ways that they change up the characters, like the fact that Bane, Bane's always been this kind of like hulking guy, but they really amp it up for this one, and across all these games, like he just looks like a freak, like he looks crazy, or even like Killer Croc. It's just really refreshing to see, like, even when these interpretations of the characters aren't like one to one with the ones you might know from the comics or the shows or even the movies, like they still feel very faithful, and they clearly respect the source material like a lot.
And they do a good job of honoring, like, it truly feels like the definitive Batman experience across all of these games, whether it is like these Easter eggs that you're talking about, or like just the fact that like the definitive Batman to a lot of people is the Batman animated series stuff. And so, okay, we're bringing back like Mark Hamill's going to be here and Kevin Conroy is going to be here and like all the voice actors that you know and love. It's going to look different, but it is very much like this is not a continuation of that world, but kind of. And then also we're going to bring in all of these different characters and tell like a authentically, especially in Arkham Asylum, a very, very like this is a Batman comic story. Like it's Batman being locked in Arkham with the bad guys, and they're all free. Like that's really cool. That's a great premise. I think for me, Arkham Asylum does go off the rails a little bit right at the end, like towards the end. It's like, oh, like
Yeah.
now Joker's got the juice in him, and
Yeah.
now we're gonna fight the big muscly Joker. And so like that for me is kind of where this like up to that point, I think this game is like perfect, and then it kind of veers off the road a little bit there.
The thing is about that decision, though, is that they made that decision and then they stuck with it because that whole thing with Joker has ramifications for the next
Mhm.
one and the one after that. So they like yeah, they took their road and they ran with it, and so I respect that. Um, and it was just sort of like that dedication to story that um maybe some previous video game sorry movie video game adaptations, whatever you call them, like hadn't really, or like IP hadn't really done. um but another thing that I think is like my favorite part of Arkham Asylum is that you're in the asylum, and that's a place that's kind of just so mysterious in, like, I mean, if you read the comics, of course, but it is, you never really get to experience it in this way. Like none of the Batman movies had really like spent a good chunk of time looking around the asylum. So you got this window into the like world of Batman that you didn't have before. And I just like thought that was so cool that you could finally like look in all the little corners and learn the history. Like there was like you'd scan the recordings and listen to the history of the founders, and it was just so well fleshed out despite being like quite a contained area.
Yeah, even though it's quite a linear game, I never felt like too enclosed in, even though you're trapped in Arkham Asylum, but it felt like there was enough scope for exploration. I could look around and like, yeah, there's like different like buildings, like you can go to like one aspect of the Arkham Mansion, or you can go to like the medical facility or the botanical gardens where Poison Ivy ends up going. And like they managed to flesh out the asylum so well. It's like so impressive like what they were able to achieve with it. And I just loved it. I never felt like, even though you kind of are on rails with a lot of the game, I never felt like restricted at all. I thought it was like really well done in that way. The one thing that kind of, and it's been a while since I played City and Night, but it really did stick out to me in this, is the boss fights. I think the boss fights, uh, they're fun in concept. Like I think they're like a good idea. But a lot of the time it does feel like, okay, this thing, I'm gonna wait for it to do like an animation, then I'm gonna throw a batarang at it, and then it's gonna do something else, and then I'll punch it for a bit, and then I'll do that again. Um, I think it would have been a bit cooler if like you have all these different gadgets, and like like Batman is known for that. It would have been cool if they kind of like capitalize that a bit more, and like, okay, you get a new gadget, here's a new fun way to like take on this boss or something like that. It did feel like, okay, Bane's charging at me, I'll throw a batarang in his head and he's gonna knock into the wall, and then I'll beat
That's
him up
right.
for a bit. Or like Poison Ivy, like she'll open her like petals, and then I'll throw a batarang at her, and then she'll get stunned, and it's that sort of thing. So that was probably my like. I was never like, it didn't annoy me or anything. It was just something I noticed. I was like, you could have done this a bit more. But I feel like the subsequent games kind of alleviate that problem a little bit. So I'm not too mad about it.
Okay. Was there any? How do you think it held up in 2024?
I think for the most part, it still feels pretty good. I mean, the combat definitely, like I said, this is definitely a foundation. Not everything is here. I remember like playing the subsequent games. You can like fling Batman across the room. Like you'll be punching one guy, and then you'll press square, and then go all the way across the the other side of the room. In the subsequent games, you can't really do that here. So I was running up to frustrations of like, I'm trying to keep my combo going, but I'll press square, and then Batman will just like punch the air. I'm like, that's not what I wanted you to do, man. Like, can you not? There's also like, I was playing the remaster, the Return to Arkham, so I think the world looks really good. But some of the like animations haven't maybe held up to the test of time as much, just because these games are quite old at this point. And also like the movement of Batman like feels not the best. It's not optimal. I feel like you have to like hold X to run. And sometimes you can't do that while also turning the camera, so it just feels kind of like, I know, a little bit stilted in the way. But I think other than all those other things, I think generally it still really holds up. Like the it's still really like fun to explore the world. Like I love the thing that like I completely forgot like how fun it is like all the Riddler stuff. Like it's just so, even when the riddles aren't like the most difficult, it's just fun to like find like, oh, this riddle like what he wants me to scan this painting or scan this like jail cell and things like that. Um, I just think like the overall experience, back in the day, every review ever would be like, this game makes you feel like Batman. And it sure does. Like it really does make you feel like Batman. So yeah. It's I think on the whole it still holds up.
How many stars out of 5?
I'd probably give it like 3.5. Like it's a solid time. Like pretty good.
Batman Arkham Asylum. Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you for presenting to the class. Round of applause for Tom, everyone. Next up, it is Batman Arkham City. That is me. I picked up the second game. This one kind of, if Arkham Asylum set the foundation, Arkham City built the house for which the Arkham franchise would kind of go on from in the trilogy here. Who knows? Maybe we'll get more. There is a new Arkham game like just this week on not PSVR, MetaQuest, I think. But yeah, Arkham City was, if you look at the 3 of them, this is the highest rated of the 3 on Metacritic. And I have not played this game since it came out. I played it the week it came out. I can remember going to Costco with my mom, and she was getting groceries, and I put the Arkham City case in the cart, and we got to the front. She's like, "Oh yeah, you can have that." And I was like, "Yes, I did it." It was like, I think 11 or something like that. It almost more than 10 years ago at this point. And I was very excited for this. I can remember the Game Awards trailer when it was first announced, and Hugo Strange, and I had no idea who Hugo Strange was, and get to play as Catwoman, and it was a whole lot. Getting back into this game, I feel like I don't want to be the most negative of the 3 of us here today. I think Batman Arkham City, I have it. It's in my like top 20 games of all time. I think Batman Arkham City is a phenomenal game, and the experience that I got from it originally was something I will never ever forget, and for that reason I will always be nostalgic for it. Jumping back into it now, and that's almost why I asked you, Tom, about Arkham Asylum. How is it in a modern day? How is it playing it on your PS5 post Arkham Knight, post Insomniac Spider-Man? I think Arkham City plays fantastic. It is the first time I have looked at a PS3 game and thought, ooh, this art style is not going to age well. These graphics are not going to age well. And it started. I played the remaster as well, so they have changed some things, but it did not look great to me really the whole way through. I thought a lot of the character models are really, really showing their age. I actually changed my Batman costume to the animated series Batman costume, so I was playing as a cell shaded Batman the whole time, so I didn't have to look at too closely at one of the character models. But like all that is, the technical stuff aside, I think that Batman Arkham City is a fantastic game still. It is I think my favorite of the three. I love the open world. I love the story. I think that Batman Arkham City is my favorite Batman story of the three. It might be my favorite like comic books, movies. I think that it is a perfect distillation of what makes Batman great to me, and it is that question of if Batman has a line, and if he were to just get rid of that, like, is that line actually playing into the villainy and the tyranny and the terrible things that are happening in this world? If he was to just cross that line and shoot the Joker in the head, would it be done? Would it be over? And I think that that is like a really, really cool dance to play around with. And we ultimately get there in the end of Arkham City when it's like, okay, like, you're done, Joker. It's over. And I think that it is good. It's not as great as I remember it being, but I remember there being a lot more Catwoman. Catwoman's really not in this game very much at all, but I had a good time.
Can you just remind us of the story because it's been a minute?
Yeah.
Like what the
So
general premise is?
So the general story of Arkham City, Arkham City takes place in a basically after Arkham Asylum, they have lopped off a portion of Gotham City and turned it into an open air prison. They've given these villains and criminals and all these people a place to run around in and basically do whatever they want. And it starts with Bruce Wayne getting admitted, and he gets into Arkham City to figure out what is going on in there and why it exists. And he puts on the cape and cowl, and then you're Batman. And the story in is that following the events of Arkham Asylum, Joker has been infected. His blood is he is dying because of the Titan juice that he drank, that he injected himself with in Arkham Asylum, and he's injected a bit into you. And so basically the whole game um does come down to trying to find the antidote to your ailment and to Joker's ailment. And it ultimately comes down to a final um, showdown between Joker and between Batman, although it turns out to be Clayface. And it's like, whoa, switcheroo. And then there is the dying Joker, and you
That's right.
can save the Joker, or like you don't as a player can't, but Batman can save the Joker and he chooses not to and lets the Joker die. And then you get the epic like ending of him carrying the dead Joker out on the street and everyone going like, whoa, what does this mean? And so that's kind of it. Hugo Strange is in there as well. He's kind of built up as the big bad because he's running Arkham City. And then he kind of like, I don't want to be mean, but he kind of goes out like a bitch. Like he just like he kind of like, you climb up to the tower, you punch him a couple times, and he's like he just is kind of being evil for being evil's sake. He doesn't really have a ton of motivations, but he's working for Ra's al Ghul to take over the world, to bring justice, to take down Gotham City, and so yeah, that's kind of how the story works.
Firstly, Ra's al Ghul confused the hell out of me when I first heard it that time because the movies had led me to believe it was Raz. I still have a pickle about that. Right. Well, I'm gonna be honest. I am probably the anomaly in where I actually like Arkham City the least of the three Batman games. I think that this is just a personal opinion, of course, but I just think that the story was so, apart from the Arkham City nature of it, which it being like that open air prison, I thought that was a great idea, particularly in terms of expanding the gameplay in this series. But I thought the story was silly. Like the fact that it was Hugo Strange and Ra's al Ghul, and like they wanted to like do this immortal life thing, and Talia's there and Catwoman's there, and it just felt messy. It felt all over the place. The Joker storyline I thought was good because it continued what they had set up in Asylum. So I liked that part, and I liked obviously that Joker is Batman's like arch nemesis, and that they were continuing that and exploring that relationship in another way. But I think all the peripheral villains in this one just weren't the strongest for me from memory.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the three, this one's probably my favorite. I like the story. I think it's the thing that I really kind of admire about it is that like paired with the kind of open world nature of it, you do have like this kind of, and this goes to all the games because there is this kind of like looming, presence from these villains. Like the first game, the Joker's like kind of talking to you as you go through the asylum. This game, you have like Hugo Strange every now and then going, "Protocol 10 will commence in 10 hours" or whatever it
Oh
is,
That's
my
right.
god.
and
Yeah.
I love that like tension that it builds, and then also paired with like the fact that Batman is dying, like he needs to find this cure, otherwise he's done for. But no, I think I like it. It is kind of silly, but that kind of I kind of like that. I kind of like that they throw in Solomon Grundy like at the beginning for like no
Oh
reason,
yeah.
or like
Yep.
yeah, you fight Clayface with a sword at the end. Like it goes wacky, and I do kind of respect that. I kind of like how just that like it is weird because like yeah, you'll have like a movie where it's like it's just going to be the Riddler, or it's just going to be Ra's al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul, whatever it is. But this, they like, yeah, they can tie in these other different villains, and like and some of them, like you said, Klein, Hugo Strange, he like goes out like a bitch, and he's done for a bit. But it's cool to get like on the flip side of that, Batman seeks out Mister Freeze, and like
Yeah.
that you have that for a bit, and I think that's really cool. So I like that they were able to bring in characters that they teased in the first game and then flesh them out a bit more in this one.
And they do a great job of really, like, really building on what they established in Arkham Asylum, where it is like we had a handful of like big bads. In this, all the side activities, whether it is like there's what's his Azazel as
Oh
Azrael
yeah,
as yeah, who's
Oh
like
yeah.
hiding on the rooftops. You can be swinging around and Man Bat like freaks out at you when like you come up over the
That's
roof.
in Night,
Is
isn't
that
it?
Night? Okay. Calendar Man.
You
I
just
know.
played it.
I played Night. What do you mean?
No, you played City, so you would remember if he was in there.
But it's a side mission. I didn't do all the side missions in Arkham City.
Ah, okay, it's in Night then.
Okay. And this Calendar Man stuff where you can like if you go on Christmas, you can find him hidden there. Like they really like flesh out the world even more.
I have a distinct memory of like going into the iceberg lounge
Yeah.
and you're like walking across ice and a bloody like shark comes out at you. It's like one of the biggest jump scare moments in my gaming history.
Yeah.
And I hate it. I
I
still
think
hate
that
it.
the like Penguin wasn't a big part of Asylum, right, Tom?
yeah, he's not in it.
Yeah. So
He's
like
only in it
the
bio.
Nolan
Yeah,
North's Penguin is
Mm.
incredible.
he's
Incredible. I think
great.
he is perfect for that role. It is funny though now, like knowing what I know about Nolan North that I didn't back then. His voice is in this game so many times. He plays the Penguin. He plays basically every goon in the street is Nolan North doing a different accent or a different voice. Like he is in this game so many times. And so when you're like, you go and fight the Penguin, then you go out on the street and you hear like, what's the bat doing here? And it's Nolan North again. And it's a little jarring.
Yeah. The other great thing that I remember from Arkham City is the way that they expanded like traversal. Like you got to do the dive and the glide, and that introduction into gameplay was it was an absolute game changer. That's one of the best things that I think the Batman Arkham Trilogy have ever done is that freedom of kind of basically flying as Batman.
The first thing I did when I started the game was I went into a dive and I came up and I shot my grappling hook at a building and went 1, 2, 3 on the X
Yeah.
button because that's what you
Yeah,
do in Night when you're fully upgraded and stuff. You get the launch, and I didn't do it. And I'm like, what the heck? And I figured out you had to do some of the AR challenges. We were out there
Oh,
flying
yeah.
through rings like Superman and Superman 64, and I finally unlocked it. And it's like Spider-Man swinging in Insomniac. It is so satisfying to leap off the side of a building on one side of the map, fly around, shoot up with the grappling hook onto another building, hit the X button a couple times, and then like get that extra speed and you don't even touch the ground, you just shoot right off again. And you don't even touch the ground all the way to your destination. And it feels so good. I mean, we'll say it again. You feel like Batman.
It was interesting also that they made you allowed Catwoman to be playable. because it kind of seemed like a decision that they wanted to test out, but then never really committed to, because like that goes away in Night. Um, but you said that she wasn't really that much of a part of it. I also had memory of her being more like in it, but she isn't.
She's very like bookended. Like you play the beginning as Batman, and then you play a couple missions as her, and then you can go through the whole story without interacting with Catwoman again until up till the very end. You have another mission with her. There are some side activities you can do with her as well, but like she comes in and out of the story, but isn't playable all the way through. So like you'll go and save her, or she'll save you, but you weren't playing as her in that moment. There are only like 2 or 3 missions really where you play as her, and then there's one big decision where she kind of goes and does a final heist and is like, I got to get out of here, and then it's right when like Batman's in trouble and you decide, do I want to go save Batman or do I want to like leave Gotham? And you go save Batman because that's what Catwoman would do. But I was surprised at how because I too remember like her being a very big part, and like not alternating missions but pretty close. Like I remember her being a big part of the main story.
And she even had trophies, right? Riddler trophies that only
Yeah.
Catwoman can get,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she could fully traverse the world, which was great. But also, I was like, I just want to get back to playing Batman.
Yeah, definitely. But one of the things in relation to that, like, I mean, you mentioned that you didn't play as much side content this time
I've done a
round.
bunch of it
Okay, you did a
since
bit of it.
yeah, I've done a bunch of it,
Yeah.
not all of it though.
With Asylum, like, they're really, other than the Riddler trophies, there isn't that much side content. But this one, they like, because it's so much more open world, like they have the opportunity to do that. I think that's one of my favorite aspects of it. Like the first game, they pick their characters that they're like, okay, we're going to develop them a little bit. But a lot of them do kind of feel like a bit one dimensional. Like Scarecrow, as much as I love those Scarecrow missions, I think they're like amazing. He is kind of like, that's fire Batman. I'm gonna trap you in this thing, and you're here. But he doesn't like. They don't really get to build upon that until like Night, where they get to flesh him out a bit more. But this, like, one of my favorite ones that I just sticks out to me is like the one with Bane, because Bane in the first game, he's a boss fight and you just like beat him up and he's just done. But in this one, you find him and he's kind of like tucked away, and you can like talk to him for a bit. And I just think I really, that's what I really loved about like how Rocksteady approached these games, is like how they kind of fleshed out these characters and made them more than just like caricatures or um like on a page, or like and just taking them um and making them and fleshing them out. Basically, I think it's really cool.
And they build into the world a bit where like you'll be flying around doing a mission and Robin shows up or Nightwing shows up,
Yeah.
or like I think that they do the introduction of Oracle, and like and having this whole like I didn't know Barbara Gordon's story at all, and so when you find out who's this Oracle person and you find, oh, like she was shot in the back and now is a wheelchair and now is kind of the girl in the chair, and I think that that is such a cool way to again build on that foundation that Asylum had, and really turn this into like, this is our Batman comics world. Like this is the Rocksteady Batman extended universe, and isn't just like this tiny little pocket one time thing in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, and they make decisions that, like we've said, that do carry through. Like I remember one of my favorite, because one of my favorite Batman villains is Hush, and I'm pretty sure he shows up in Asylum in Arkham City first, right? There's a
Yeah.
side quest where you have to investigate the murders that have been taking place, and that leads to the reveal of Hush, which I think is great, and he then comes back in Night. So they do have like trajectories for these characters, which is just like, it's so cool. It makes it a real trilogy because one flows so seamlessly into the next.
And I do want to shout out, because Tom, you had mentioned the boss fights in Arkham Asylum maybe being something that holds that game back a little bit. I think the boss fights in this game are great. There are definitely some highlights. There are definitely some that do not hit. I think that the Clayface fighting with a sword at the very end, it works, but it does ultimately come down to shooting your Mr. Freeze gun at him a whole bunch and punching him a bit. But then you get into boss fights like, I love the Ra's al Ghul stuff when you go into the League of Shadows and or the Solomon pit, the something pit, Lazarus pit, and you're like flying around, and they make a what would be fairly traditional I'm just going to punch this guy a bunch of times fight into this unique, like, you're kind of going platform to platform obstacle course until you ultimately get to this place where you have to take him down. And then you can't talk about Arkham City's boss fights without mentioning the Mr. Freeze stuff. Like, the Mr. Freeze boss fight in this game is so cool, and is it to me perfectly defines what is so cool about Batman's rogues gallery. Is you have the hulking, I'm just going to punch the crap out of you Banes of the world, but then you also have, like, Batman is as much the detective as he is the fists, right? Like, he is lurking around in the shadows and calculating the enemy and trying to figure out what to do next and what advantage to take advantage of. And so Mr. Freeze in that fight, where it is you're using a gadget, but you can only use it once, because Mr. Freeze is also a very smart guy and is learning, and I think that is so cool and unique. And then you can go back and do the side quest for him and get a harder version of it, where you have to do it again essentially, but you can't use the opportunities you used before. I think that, like, that is it's so cool and so unique, when it could have just been a, let's get in an arena, let's punch him a bunch of times, and I'm glad they didn't do that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I guess we haven't, like, we touched on it a little bit, but half this game is like free flow combat, which is like really fun, just beating up goons. But then the other half is the stealth, and like the
I
stealth
could
is so
I could
strong.
do I have it written in my notes. I could do these predator sections until the end of time. Like, just give me an unlimited one of these a week for the rest of my life. I would be happy.
They're just so good. Like, and it just reminds me of, like, yeah, what great stealth in games should be. Like, I think, like, the amount of options you have as Batman, you can do your, like, inverted takedowns or like sneak up behind a guy, but then you also, like, the gadgets add such a layer, like, another layer to it, and then, like, you'll have, your the explosive gel, and you can plant that somewhere, and like someone will walk past and they'll explode. And there's just so many different ways they kind of take the stealth, and make it so it doesn't feel stale ever, because then you'll have, like, oh, now the enemies can, like, look on gargoyles and see you, like, so you have to keep moving, and you can't just, like, do you can't just fall into one mode of, like, approaching these stealth missions. You have to constantly be on your toes. And like the Mr. Freeze fight is like the culmination of that, is like the perfect, like, way to take um that gameplay style. I think it's so smart, like, the way they were able to pull that all together.
Okay. Anything else?
What would you rate it?
What would I
Yeah.
rate it? I think I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I still think that this is a great game. There are just this game, especially because I've most recently played Night before this. I played Night a couple of years ago, and Night is beautiful. Chef's kiss, stunning. This game, of all of them, I would love a remaster. Like, not a remaster, because I guess this is technically already a remaster. Remake this game in the Night engine, and it would be a 5 out of 5. Like, that was really my only gripe, is that the characters specifically, they look ugly. They do not look good.
Don't talk about the Joker that way.
The Joker is, in this game especially, is supposed to look very ugly.
Oh yeah,
His
Horrendous.
face is peeling
he's
off,
something.
and yeah, he's
Yeah,
Mark Hamill's Joker is just 10 out of 10. He is so
he's
good.
great.
Lauren, we have one last game to talk about here. Let's talk about some tank missions. Come on.
Yeah, so I played Arkham Knight, which is, I think, all in all, after our conversation, this is the magnum opus of Rocksteady's Arkham Trilogy. This is the culmination of everything that they had learned. It is the last game in the series that we know of. I mean, it seems like it's the last one. They went on to do Suicide Squad, kill the Justice League after this, unfortunately. But it is... I mean, I think it's pretty close to perfect, but I know that some people have some issues with it. Essentially, Arkham Knight takes place on Halloween, which is ironic, perfectly timed for this. And it sees Scarecrow is the main villain, and he has basically this plans to release his fear toxin on all of Gotham. So everybody has been evacuated, which explains why there's no civilians in the street. And the goons have taken over the city, and Batman has to come in and have basically one hell of a night and put Scarecrow's plan to rest. But there is a secondary villain who appears as the Arkham Knight. and we don't know the identity of this person, just that they have a massive militia resource and seem to know heaps about Batman and how he operates. And this person is helping Scarecrow enact his plan. And so, I guess, yeah, if you don't want to know the twist of Arkham Knight, like, pause here and come back later. But basically, the game's been out for almost 10 years, so you have no excuse. But I think that the way that they reveal the Arkham Knight's identity is like the highlight of this game for me, because, like we've talked about, Rocksteady has such a like reverence and care for Batman's lore, and the way that they work it into this game, I think I really, really appreciate it. Essentially, after playing a bunch of missions, you find out that the Arkham Knight is actually Jason Todd, who was Batman's first Robin. And the way that they revealed this is like really interesting. I think, going off on a tangent, one of the things that I think Arkham Knight does best is like it plays with style. So the game opens in a first person cutscene, which I'd completely forgotten about. And it's quite well rendered. It does look a little bit jarring to some of the other parts of the game, but it isn't afraid to sort of make it feel sometimes like a movie. And so a lot of the times it plays with your like perception of reality. Like, what I seeing right now, is it real, or is it something from Scarecrow's fear gas, or is it a memory, or is it a flashback? And I should also mention that Joker, despite dying in Arkham City, he comes back as a part, like as a figment of your mind, because he is still, his blood is like toxic and is still in Batman, and it's like driving him slowly insane. So he has to fight that. So there is this overall feeling of this theme of fear and like what it is to Batman and what it is to other people. And essentially, yeah, his greatest fear is like losing people, and losing people who he has enlisted to help him. So Jason Todd is like the like culmination of that, essentially, as the Robin that he lost, who is now coming back to haunt him. And I think it's an amazing game. I think it's an amazing story, and I think it's my favorite of the three. But what do you guys think of Arkham Knight's story?
Arkham Knight, I think, was I played it. Well, I first watched my. I feel like there's a theme of me watching my friends play the Arkham games, and I play it afterwards. But I remember like watching my friend play it because he got it, and I watched him play the whole game through, and then I eventually went and played the game fully for myself. But yeah, I think the story overall, I like it. I like Scarecrow's kind of presence in the game. I like the Arkham Knight as like a concept. I think like it's really cool. And then you also have like these like Joker infected people that are being kind of like turned. It's kind of like that Batman Beyond Return of the Joker movie where like people are being turned into the Joker, or specifically one person. But this game you have multiple people. I think the Jason Todd twist, and I feel like if I went back, maybe I could appreciate it more. But the first time experiencing it, there was all this fervor of like, who's the Arkham Knight? Like, who is that? Like, who's it gonna be? And everyone was kind of like, oh, is it Jason Todd? Because he's like the Red Hood in the comics. Like that's who his identity is going to be. And it seemed like that was kind of the parallel they're drawing, and that is ultimately how it goes. And Rocksteady at the time was like, guys, it's not Jason Todd. Like, just wait till play the game, and you'll find out. And it turned out to be that was the case. And I think that's a fine direction to go. I think that's cool. But it definitely like some of the weight for me at least like was taken just because of like, oh, it was the guy that I thought it was going to be. But I think it is very very well executed, and like the way that it does play with like you see these flashbacks with Jason, and it's like quite harrowing, like with him and the Joker, and like a lot of that stuff really does hit quite well. But yeah, I think if I went back, I'd probably appreciate that kind of side of the story a little bit more.
That's interesting because I was never spoiled on it, so I guess that's why it maybe hit harder for me. I just never had any. I started to suspect once we were seeing flashbacks, like the first time of Jason. I was like, oh, maybe this is who it is, like that. But that's really the only time you have any idea who it is, and they only reveal it quite soon to his actual like face reveal, which is something I'd forgotten about. This game is quite long. The story, just playing the mainlining the campaign, it's a long story, which I appreciate because it's a great game and deserves a long story. But Klein, what do you think?
I think that between Arkham City and Knight, it is like neck and neck for me. I love them both very very much, and the story in Knight, I didn't have the Jason Todd thing spoiled for me. I was here ready to go for this game. I was in the marketing and stuff like that. And I just remember the emphasis every time they talked about this game was this is Rocksteady's first original Batman character. And that was a big deal. And that was something they branded everything with. And so I also didn't necessarily know the Jason Todd story going in. Like these games introduced me to a lot of like Batman lore and who is who and these different comic book storylines. I hadn't gone back and read them before I'd played these games. And so I had no idea who Jason Todd was when that twist happened. And finding that out for the first time was like, whoa, like this is crazy. This is wild. I like it. I think that it depends on the day. I think that this is also an incredibly strong story. I think that is just a testament that like how well Rocksteady know this character for that they made these 3 games that are all so Batman. And I think that Arkham Knight is overhated. And people get mad at certain things, the Arkham Knight twist, the Batmobile, stuff like that. I believe, and I think there are a few other fans in the Rocksteady universe that think this way as well. If they had not shown the Arkham Knight villain before this game, I think half the people who are mad at it, they wouldn't be mad anymore. Like they wouldn't have a case. But it's just the fact that they built up this character only for it to ultimately be a character that we all knew, made people upset, and now they just like they look poorly at the whole thing.
Well, the other like thing that we have to bring up is that the major evolution in this game, which I think logically makes sense, is that they introduced the Batmobile, which was like incredibly freaking cool to be able to like have an open world Batman game that suddenly you can like drive through. And logically, it does make sense. You make the world bigger, you need an easier way to traverse it. And like we talked about, you have the grapple hook, which can be upgraded and lets you like fly higher and fly further, and you can go around the skyscrapers and things like that. That's all great. But sometimes you just want to get somewhere quickly, and so you need the Batmobile. So they introduced it. It has 2 modes, one which is just like speed racer, drive the car around as fast as you can, and then it also has a tank mode, which lets you do tank battles and solve puzzles with the car and things like that. And playing it again, I just think the Batmobile works. I think it feels great to drive. The shooting is great. I do see why some people disliked it because having only playing just the main campaign and not sort of branching out into side quests, it's basically involved in every mission. Like you take it with you everywhere. But I think it kind of worked logically with the story because otherwise we'd just be having another game where you are just doing like predator missions and free flow combat, and kind of alternating between those two gets old. So I think in the third game it makes sense for them to introduce a third element, which is the car. But if you are just mainlining the main story, it is involved a lot. So I can see why that would be a criticism. But what do you guys think of the Batmobile? Where do you stand on it?
I'm pro Batmobile. I'm pro Bat Tank. I don't get the hate. Like I genuinely don't get it. I have fun doing the Bat Tank missions in particular. There's something, it's like a puzzle to me where you're like finding the perfect spot where you can get out of the line of fire and taking these people out. I think that shooting the enemy tanks is incredibly satisfying. The sound design, the feeling of pulling the trigger and hitting it, I think like they nailed that. Sure, it is not traditionally Batman to be slowing things down and like driving a tank around, but I dig it. Like I really like it.
Yeah, I think gameplay wise, like I do think it works, and I think it is just because like it is Rocksteady who was developing it. Like they make it feel really good. I can't remember. I might be like misremembering it, but like when you call the Batmobile, is there like some aspect of like destructible environment where like the Batmobile will sometimes like crash into something and it'll like the world will kind of like break a little bit? Am I remembering that right? Does that happen?
Like a glitch or?
No, just like the like a bit of like rubble will come off the wall or something, like just because of the
Oh
Batman.
yeah, you can run into things.
Yeah,
Go
so that's I'm not making that up. So that's good. Yeah, but I really like that. It makes you feel so powerful in this like big hulking thing. Like I really dig it. I think it's integrated pretty well. The only quibble I have with it is, and this is mostly just because of like a decision like gameplay wise, is the fact that like Deathstroke is part of this game. Traditionally, a hand-to-hand combatant, he'll fight with a sword, or maybe he'll shoot with a gun every now and then. But you do fight him in a tank in
Oh,
this,
yes.
and I think
Yeah,
it
you
is a
do.
little bit disappointing. I mean, like,
That's
and you
fair.
eventually, like, we did get, like, with Batman Arkham Origins, you do get that
Hmm.
Spoiler.
fight with him. Sorry. I mean, it's it was in the trailers, guys. Like,
I know,
it's
I
been a
know.
while,
I'm kidding.
but yeah, that was the only time where I was like, oh, I wish this maybe hadn't been integrated. Maybe there could have been a different villain they could have done in like a tank battle in that sort of way. But I like the integration of it everywhere else. I think, yeah, like you said, Lauren, if they had just like if they hadn't done this, it would have just been another Batman game. But I think if the fact that they did want to try something new, did want to innovate, I think is really commendable, and I think it works. I think it's really cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, like if they ever did a fourth Batman Arkham game, my expectation would be like the next level would be to introduce the Batwing. And so then I would expect that there would be like aerial missions and things like that. Like that would just logically make sense. And that is what happened here. I do have two gripes with the Batmobile, small ones, just because I had forgotten by replaying it. To switch between car and tank is very seamless. You just have to hold down the left trigger. The only thing is you have to keep it held every time that you want to be in the tank.
Yeah.
So if there was just a thing of being like double tap stay in tank mode, I would have really appreciated that, because there's sometimes that you are in long tank battles, particularly, which is my next gripe, the cloudburst sequence. So essentially what happens is Scarecrow puts his big gas generator called the cloudburst onto a tank, and up until this point, most of the vehicles you've been fighting in your Batmobile are generally like 1 or 2 shot kills. And then he introduces these Cobra tanks, which are like you need to approach them basically in stealth mode, which is so funny being in stealth mode in a tank, but you are. And you have to go up behind them without them seeing you and shoot them like after like a lock on sequence. And if they see you, like you're done for. You gotta drive out of there. And so there's this sequence with the Arkham Knights driving the Cloudburst and tank, and there are like 7 other Cobra tanks at once, and you have to like hide in tunnels and like use your radar to see where they're coming at, and you need to take out all of the Cobra tanks before getting to the Cloudburst. And God, if they see you, it's just game over. I died so many times. I had forgotten what stress was until I played this sequence again. It is hands down probably the one part that I hate about this game, because I know that I have to get through it to progress, and it has always stuck with me ever since it came out. And that did not change this time around. It is so difficult, particularly fighting the Cloudburst tank, because he will chase you, and it's sort of like it's like the camera widens and you are small, and like the tank is kind of coming up behind you, and you just have to drive. And it's like in that moment, I've forgotten how to drive. I cannot get out of any corner. I run into everything, and it's kind of one shot kill and you're done. So that is a very frustrating sequence, and I dread it every single time. So if they could just tone the difficulty down on that, it would be great. Because if you die, you have to start again and get rid of all the 7 tanks, and it's so frustrating.
The second you
I
started
completely forgot about that.
describing it, Lauren, I was like, I know exactly the sequence you're talking about, and I hadn't. It unlocked something in my brain. It was like a trauma memory. I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
yep, that sequence sucks.
I hate it. But the only other thing is that the side missions, I think, in this game are possibly the best developed that they've been, like, out of the trilogy. They all have, like, some of them are a little bit samey, where it's like, okay, I have to, like, put out the fire at the fire station 6 times to get rid of Firefly or whatever his name is. But some of them are really well developed. Like, I think the penguin sequences, again, like, they're quite regimented to be like, I feel like going and chasing a car at this point, or actually, no, I feel like doing a tank challenge, or I feel like chasing Man-Bat. Like, I like that they are so varied and that each one of them is so unique, and jumping in between them like feels really satisfying. And then they all generally resolve with like a quite satisfying boss fight. So I think that they really found their groove in this game of balancing main story and like really interesting side quests that make you want to play the game. It was a shame that I didn't have time to do it all this time, but I like remember feeling the need to 100% it, because there's a secret ending as well after you get all the missions done.
One of my favorite side quests, I guess 2 of them, is the one they introduced thing. They have the free flow combat again, but you have instead like missions where you'll team up with Nightwing or you'll team up with Catwoman, and like
Yes.
being able to do that and switching was just like so fun. I think like in City they have these, missions where they introduce like you can play as Robin or you can play as Nightwing, but only in these kind of like predetermined arenas. And in some ways, like these missions are kind of just arenas where you're playing with Nightwing or stuff. But I think having that kind of interplay, and then also allowing to have this other side of like, oh yeah, we haven't had Nightwing yet in the franchise. Let's develop this. I think like that was really cool to see. I think that I guess that's where they kind of took it with Suicide Squad. Like, okay, we have like these kind of other alternate characters. Let's let you play as all of them. Which that's it happened as it happened. But I think it worked well in the context of this game.
I remember liking the Riddler, the races, like where
Oh,
it's like
yes.
almost car platforming where you're like doing
Yeah.
loops and stuff like that. And that was, I don't remember being a big fan of that when I played it the first time. That wasn't until I replayed it a couple of years ago that I really sat down and like figured out the physics of this car. And then I really liked it. I'm like, I could do these forever. These are so much fun.
Well, yeah, the other thing is like I'll keep saying my whole learning from this is that it is just like Rocksteady really they learned from Asylum and City. And so even in Predator missions are still there, but it's like, okay, now we have people who can detect your location with um when you're using detective vision, or who have miniguns, so you have to take them out last. Like they really made you think strategically. But then on the side, you have a weapon that can maybe like disable a drone that someone's flying and stuff like that. So there was like so many more options for how to take on challenges. And then similarly in free flow combat sections, they have a huge variety of enemies now. You have people who are medics and can revive people, or ones who will like have an electric charge around them, and you have to like use this combo to get rid of them and a different combo to get rid of this person. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little overwhelming at times because there's so many different button combos to think of, and free flow combat is perhaps not the best use of that because you can't aim at which enemy you're going for, so that is a little difficult. But for the most part, I liked how they just introduced all this variety in this game that again would have made it boring if we just sort of continued from what was set up in City. So they did have to evolve, and they like rose to the challenge, which is awesome.
Does it still look as good as it, like, I remember playing 2 years ago and going, how is this game almost a decade old? Like at least then it looked incredible.
I was still pretty satisfied. Like I was playing on quite an old TV on my Xbox Series X, which which only goes to, it's like locked at a frame rate. So I was expecting it to not look great. I thought it was great. Like I didn't really notice any problems with it. It's still, I'm very satisfied with it. It's a beautiful game.
Constantly raining, the rain hitting the
Always raining.
cape with the holes in the
Neon
cape.
lights.
Oh, it looks so good.
Yeah. Reflections.
Okay. Lauren, how many stars out of 5 are you giving Arkham Knight?
Again, like this is my favorite out of the Arkham trilogy, so I know not everyone feels this way, but it's 4.5 for me, because if it didn't have that cloudburst sequence, it would be a 5.
Amazing. Okay, Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight, all 3 of them. I want to ask the 2 of you before we get out of here. Do you think we have seen the last of Rocksteady in the Arkhamverse?
No. No.
You don't?
I think they're going back to it. I mean, like you said, they have that Arkham Shadow game on VR now, which apparently is good. I won't be able to play it because I don't have VR.
Elijah Wood
But
playing Scarecrow in that game.
is he actually?
He is.
Crazy. Oh my god. Okay. Well, yeah, but yeah, I think in terms of them returning to it, I think part of me is like, I love this trilogy so much that I'm kind of like, I wish they would do something new, but then they did something new with Suicide Squad. No, I liked it. But it is almost kind of like, it is kind of nice going back to Batman as a character. There's still so much more they can do with it, that I feel like, yeah, I think it makes sense for Rocksteady to do it. Will it reach these heights again? Like, Rocksteady is a very different studio now. Like, I don't know if it can, but I hope it does. Like, I hope they can go back to the greatness of this trilogy, because we need more Batman games.
Yeah, that's my concern as well, is that in between the time of Night and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, a lot of the creatives who made the Arkham trilogy are kind of gone. So I'd worry about them like trying to return to it without those kinds of brains. But I'm sure they can still do it. And I'm sure that they will. They're probably looking at the history and going like, maybe we need to go back to what made us great and go back to basics. And maybe look at Batman, maybe look at another DC character. I don't know, but I don't think the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League method worked for them, and they might be looking back at the Arkham Trilogy now.
If you had asked me whether they would do Batman again before, like around the time we first saw Suicide Squad, like that first trailer, I would have said no. I think now that everything that has happened, I have a feeling that is what they're working on as we speak. I have a feeling we will get another Rocksteady Batman game. My dream, there was a rumor for a long time they were doing a Ninja Turtles game, which would have been like, that sounds great. I would do that. Give me Arkham City with the Ninja Turtles, but I want more. I want more Arkham. I would love to play more of these. I'm surprised that the Gotham Knights team, I'm surprised that that's the direction they went in instead of like just doing like Arkham Origins 2 kind of, because these games are so beloved. But what do you think, dear listener? You can let us know over on social media. We're on Twitter at controller_club, at controller club pod on Instagram, and at controller.club on TikTok. Also, if you're listening to the podcast, you can also watch it. We have a video version going up every week over on our YouTube channels. Please subscribe, hit the bell, like the videos, comment, interact, do all the things. You can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/@controller_club. We have the latest episodes there, putting up some segments, doing YouTube shorts. We're doing the whole thing. It's a whole lot of fun over on YouTube. Also, rate and review us wherever you're listening. You can also leave comments on Spotify, I just found out. So 5 stars, leave us a comment, say hello, send in anything you want, emails, topic ideas, just hellos to our email address, controllerclubpod@gmail.com. Tom Drew, what do you have going on? Where do you want to direct the people? What's up? What's happening?
You can find me at Tom Drew Art on Instagram and Twitter. Yeah, nothing. I haven't really posted much recently. I wanted to post something in anticipation for Halloween. We still have a couple days. Maybe there'll be something Resident Evil related, or maybe something Batman related. It really depends on my mood. But you'll find it at Tom Drew Art, regardless.
Lauren, do you have anything exciting going on, and where can people find it?
You can follow me at lrouse19 on the socials, where I will hopefully be posting my Duolingo friend code. So come and friend me and let me follow all your language journeys and help me stay to mine, because I'm only 2 days in and I need the motivation.
Fantastic. Yeah, got to keep Lauren honest. Keep her on the train. You can keep up with me everywhere. I'm at the Kleinfelt, TheKleinFelt. That's going to wrap up this episode of Controller Club. I want to give a quick heads up for the next month. November will be Arcane month. So if you're excited for the new season, if you loved the last season, please join us throughout November, as we'll be covering season 2, recapping season 1, doing all the things. Maybe we've got some special guests lined up. I hear Tom was in the vicinity of Ella Purnell over the past couple of days. I'm just saying.
Maybe she'll be on the pod.
No,
Who knows?
maybe. We never know. We can't.
We're manifesting.
Exactly. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. Now, let's get gaming.